Hello, welcome to today's episode. I am joined by Leanne Jarvis. She is a certified fertility awareness and hormone coach with her business RoseFem, where she is on a mission to empower women with reproductive care that honors their bodies. And this is a very timely conversation that we'll be having just based on just what's happening in our society as we think about women's health and just a lot of controversies out there, even with IVF or just whatever it may be, and just a lot of people not knowing how their bodies operate. And I'll be one to admit that I don't know as much about my body and my hormones as much as I should. And I met Leanne probably about maybe a year ago, I think it was, and just seeing your journey with establishing your business and just providing just valuable information that will benefit so many women. And so I'm excited to have her on. And I will say, if you are a man who's listening, don't just immediately say, oh, close, this is not about me. If you have any women in your life, whether your mom or your spouse or your sister, then listen in because this will help you be able to best support them and just at least guide them to good resources. So, Leanne, thank you for joining, and just would love for you to introduce yourself and just speak more about RoseFem.
Thank you, Valentina, for that beautiful introduction. And it's a joy to have this conversation with you. I'm so excited to get to share what I've been working on through my business, RoseFem. And I think you summarized it beautifully. Truly, the mission is to empower women with holistic, science based reproductive care across the spectrum, starting with adolescent women all the way through the menopausal and post-menopausal years. I really am passionate about equipping women to understand the beauty of their bodies and to live in their dignity fully. And so it starts with that education about our bodies, but it's really my whole mission is about restoring the heart of womanhood, empowering women to live out our dignity to the fullest as God intended. And I think you just highlighted that it is a hot button topic right now. There's a lot going on in the world, and I think we're starting to become more aware of the ways that there has truly been a disservice to women when it comes to education about our hormones, about our overall health and bodies, and then also disservice through reproductive care that really has missed the mark. And so everything from IVF to hormonal contraception, I think we're starting to become more aware of the effects of it. And so it's truly a blessing and a grace to be in this realm of work at this time. And I think there's a lot of hope and potential, but it starts with every woman, and it starts with each and every woman understanding the beauty and the dignity of her own body.
So, can you share a little bit about what prompted you to start this business and just even share your journey from because you're initially a collegiate
Mhm.
athlete to a focus missionary to work in this realm? So, just would love to just share about your story.
Sure. Well, I like to say, in the hands of God, nothing is wasted. He uses every detail of our lives, and I've truly seen that just over the last handful of years, or 10+ years now of my life. The way that He's woven these intricate details together, which has led me to starting RoseFem and to really this mission that I feel called to. And so, as you said, a lot of it started with my journey as a collegiate athlete. I was a runner. I ran cross country and track in college. And through that experience of pushing my body to the limits, there were repercussions, physically and particularly hormonally speaking. I actually was not menstruating at the time, came into college without a period, and really was just an ignorant 18-year-old trying to run as fast as I could and perform well, make it on the cross country team. But I quickly saw the effects of not understanding and not honoring my body. And so after about a year of seeing improvements to my time and enjoying the experience as a cross country runner, I started to face injuries and repetitive stress fractures. And it was through meeting with our team physician that I was told, the reason why your bones are breaking is because your hormones are depleted, because you're not getting a period. But I was then recommended to begin taking hormonal contraception as a means for kickstarting and kind of resetting my hormones. But little did I know at the time, I didn't realize that hormonal contraception actually doesn't help. It's not the solution. It's providing a low level of synthetic hormones, but it's not helping our bodies in the beautiful natural cycle of hormones that we need for our cycles, and then also for other effects such as protecting our bone health. And so that's where the Lord intertwined my experience as an athlete with my studies in the classroom. I was a molecular biology and nutritional science major. And so as I started to dive into nutrition and endocrinology classes, I started to ask the questions of, what's going on, physically speaking, between, this communication between my brain and the ovaries. Clearly something is off. And through understanding more about the mechanisms of hormonal contraception, I realized that it's not protective, and it's not working with our bodies. And then to insert one other piece of the puzzle, I was thankful that this journey and discovery process also coincided with a deepening of my Catholic faith during college, and through being mentored and guided in faith through our college campus ministry at UC Berkeley, I started to dive into more of the teachings of the church, reading some of the writings of St. John Paul II, his letter to women, and Pope Paul the Sixth Humanae Vitae, to understand some of the warnings about contraception. And so really just starting to piece these different factors together spiritually, scientifically, and my lived experience as a female athlete, and kind of this pressure to perform as men. I started to just ask these questions of, what does my female body really need, and who is here to advocate for it? And thanks be to God, the church, in her wisdom and in truly upholding the dignity of women where the rest of society doesn't. We can thank the church, and I was able to think that that's such an important component of my journey, the spiritual side, but seeing that the church does support women fully, and where there weren't answers, neither scientifically nor morally speaking, when it comes to hormonal contraception, the church has an answer. And so through, I guess, to fast forward a little bit through this process, it was really through injuries that led me to these questions, that led me deeper into the faith. And then it was a long healing journey, physically speaking. But while on this journey, after graduating from college, I became a missionary on the college campus. And I realized that my story resonated with many women. And though, there were particularities to my story as a collegiate athlete, I encountered so many women on the college campus who didn't feel equipped in their bodies. They didn't have basic knowledge of their cycles or their hormones, and felt underserved when it comes to their medical care. And so a lot of women I would speak to would end up asking me questions about, I was told I need to take birth control because I have painful periods or because of these symptoms. I don't really want to. As a Catholic, are there other options? And so that really kickstarted my passion to not just learn for my own sake, but to share this knowledge with other women, to share everything that I was learning for myself with others. And so that led me to eventually become certified as a fertility awareness instructor and hormone coach, through which I get to equip women in that understanding, learning the beauty of their bodies, learning that ovulation is a vital sign of health, that it's not about just achieving or avoiding pregnancy, but it's about understanding, am I ovulating for the sake of all of the health benefits that provides? And then I also get to work with couples during the beautiful time of marriage preparation, and in starting to understand this language of mutual fertility. And as you said, this conversation is for men as well. There's an important role that men have in understanding the bodies of women. And so yeah, it's been a journey, and so through that work of becoming certified as a fertility awareness and hormone coach, that has led me to RoseFem, which is really about offering my services as a coach and equipping women, but just granting women this empowerment across the reproductive spectrum to understand that your body is good, that you can live in it holistically, that you can live out the mission that God has intended for you when you are in harmony with your body. And when there's disintegration and we are not aligned in our bodies physically, there are spiritual, emotional impacts and beyond. So
Yeah, gosh, I can hear you just talk more about this. This is
yeah,
so important.
I could go on. I know that is a lot, but it's hard for me to keep it brief because there are so many layers in my story, and I believe with many women.
Yes, no, I love your passion and I love just your mission for this. I remember when I was a couple of years before I got married, I started to do just chart my cycle, probably for the first time in my life. I remember
Mhm.
when I was a teenager, my mom would say, "You should keep track of your cycles," and I was like, "Why?" But I was
Why?
just
What does that mean? I don't need
yeah.
that.
And she would say, just like put when your period comes, at least one, like just keep
Mhm.
track. And I was like, okay, mom. Needless to say, she was right. When I was an adult, I was like, oh, this is actually
Something we're
important.
not always, eager to listen to our moms at that age, particularly
Yeah,
when it comes to things around your health and body. Yeah.
exactly. But when I started doing marriage prep and we were doing natural family planning and just we used the Creighton model. And so I just track my cycles and the mucus, and I was like, this is a lot. Like, what is all of this?
Yeah.
But then now, a couple years in our marriage, I'm like, this is very useful information, and I wish I
Mhm.
had done this years ago. But yeah, just how knowledge is power. Like just knowing how your own body works is very empowering, and you can be able to identify, okay, this is why I feel this way, or
Mhm.
this is why I have low energy, or maybe I have a lot of energy at this time of my cycle, and it's just so like just empowering. And yeah,
Exactly.
I just love that you're helping women understand and couples understand so they can better not only, I guess, operate in union, but also understand
Mhm.
what's happening with
Yeah,
the other.
I love that. Yes, absolutely. Operate in union, and then also just have that empowerment for that shared language. And I think your experience is similar for many women in couples. It's not until marriage preparation, oftentimes just a handful of months before marriage, that they're learning to chart their cycles, and that can be while it's a gift to learn at that time, better late than never. That can be a high stress time when there's a whole lot going on in your life while you're planning a wedding, and not to mention the stress of all that can throw your cycles off. So it can be a challenging time to start to recognize patterns of your cycle. And so I really like to encourage women that this isn't something to wait for until you are about to get married. I think, yeah, it's very easy for many of us to think, that's something I can handle later. But when we start to recognize those patterns, then we can live in the rhythm with our cycle and tap into, the natural, I like to call them superpowers, that each of our hormones give us, to recognize that there are these different phases based on our hormones. We have our estrogen genius phase, we have our progesterone genius. During your high estrogen phase, you might feel more energetic, social, driven to more creative projects. We can live in that fully. God, in the intricacy of His design, has given us that ability to live with rhythms and seasons. And there's a particularity to that for women, and so whether it's, yeah, embracing more energy, creativity, romance, etc., during your first half of your cycle, and then more of that nesting instinct during the second half, when we're in the progesterone phase or the pro-gestation phase, where our body's preparing for pregnancy, whether we actually become pregnant or not. We can also tap into that. And so there's a beauty to it that goes beyond our, like I said, beyond our fertility. It's just about living holistically well as women. And then also, charting is truly a gateway to health when it comes to if we're not experiencing these natural rhythms, or if there are crazy symptoms. It's important to be able to start to recognize those patterns of, actually, it's 7 days before my next cycle begins, before my period, that I start to have these crazy symptoms of anxiety or cravings or cramps or whatever it is. And when you start to recognize the patterns and you have that vital information, the objective data from your cycle, we're equipped for good medical care. And so that's the beautiful component, that it's not just about, charting for your own sake, recognizing your patterns, but actually this is vital information that you can take to doctors who are trained in these systems of fertility awareness. You can look at your chart and order properly timed lab testing. They can recognize, imbalances based on these symptoms. You may have low production of hormones or estrogen dominance, or are some of these indications of your cycle indicative of PCOS or endometriosis, which are two of the most common hormonal conditions that women face. And so it's really empowerment. It's a gateway to health. It's a mutual language between spouses. There are just many, many layers to it. And so that's why I love in my work of coaching, it's about accompanying women and couples through all aspects of this, through the medical side of addressing hormonal imbalances. But it's also about coming into that flourishing life as women, of recognizing, where am I in experiencing dissonance or disintegration in my body? Where is, maybe the way that I'm viewing my body, if I see it as bad, or I'm white knuckling it through certain parts of my cycle, or I'm struggling with my spouse at these times of the month? How can I start to understand that this isn't, it's not just about pushing it away or suppressing it, but coming to understand, that we can live holistically well and with God at the center. And our symptoms are often speaking to us. There's a language, and we need to listen. And so, it's not always about just a quick medical answer when there are imbalances, but rather this journey of coming to live in harmony with your body. And so that's why I'm so passionate about, we need accompaniment, we need coaching to support us in all areas. And my coaching really aims to blend all of these components, the spiritual, the physical, and the mental, because we are an integrated whole as mind, body, and soul.
Absolutely. I would love to hear some of the success stories of the women and even the couples that you've worked with. Would you mind sharing?
Yeah. Well, I would be happy to. Well, as far as women I've worked with in the last year, one of the greatest joys to me was receiving a message several months after I worked with a woman with the news that she was pregnant. And of course, that's an easy marker of success per se, but that's not all that I'm looking for. And I will not say that her pregnancy, successful conception, and thanks be to God, carried the baby to term. She just had her baby a couple months ago. That's it was not all me, but or our work together. But really, for her, she came to me at a time of really just defeat in her body, because she had experienced 2 miscarriages within a handful of months. And after easily conceiving and starting her family, she and her husband had 2 young children. And after those first 2, they started to experience these miscarriages, and really didn't know that what was going on, because there hadn't been any trouble before. And I think when it comes to the gift of life, of growing our families, being open to life, there's of course a particular ache and a particular struggle. And I think that weight, or that cross that women can carry in particular, can affect the way that she's viewing herself, her dignity, her calling as a wife and a mother. And so this woman came to me just in a place of defeat and despair when it came to both her health as well as her self-image, and living out her vocational calling, because there was this question of, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with my body, why am I failing to to be able to carry life. And so much of our work was just equipping her again with that knowledge of, no, it's, your body is good, it's not broken, this isn't just because you've had miscarriages, there is something here, um to come to understand why that's taking place. And we can work with your doctor and request certain lab testing. We can dive into this a little more than her doctor had willingly done prior to our work together. So it was a matter of equipping her on the medical side, but then also just journeying with her through that time. And so at the end of our time together, she just really said, I'm so thankful. I feel like I have better knowledge of my body than ever before. I'm okay with listening to its needs. I don't feel like I'm at odds with it at different times of the month, or that, it's failed me, but I can embrace the gift and also be patient. When the Lord is ready to gift us life again, he will. And sure enough, he did, and was faithful to that. But it was really just beautiful to see that it wasn't just reachieving pregnancy that she was after, but about regaining peace in her calling as a woman, as in her vocation as a wife and a mother. So that would be one success story. And then, I would share in my, particularly in work with couples, not necessarily a tangible success story, but one of the greatest joys for me is to see the men light up in our meetings when I'm teaching fertility awareness with engaged couples, to just see the fiance, the man in the relationship, really come to embrace the beauty of the woman in his life, his future spouse, with a newfound reverence for her, and really an ownership on his end as well of the beauty of their fertility and the beauty of her cycles. And so I love just asking questions during our sessions to prompt men to answer those questions, to have very nitty-gritty details about the cycle, to empower them to know more about cervical mucus than they probably ever thought that they would. But really just getting to see, the men empowered to reverence their future spouse, and then also to take that ownership of even writing the daily markers for the chart down themselves, and making it a combined language of communication between them.
Yes, I agree. Having my husband walk alongside me with my fertility is so much. It's like, it's not a taboo topic. It's not a like, oh, that's just what you deal with. It's very
Yeah.
much brings us together, and like, he's as knowledgeable, sometimes even more knowledgeable than me
Yeah.
about things. And
And I
yeah.
think that's, it's so beautiful to hear. And to hear from couples that sometimes the man has more knowledge, sometimes he can have more, it can be easier for him to see things objectively. We're in our own bodies sometimes, experiencing the symptoms, the different fluctuations in our hormones. It can be hard to step back to think, okay, why am I acting this way or feeling this way, whereas he can say, honey, could it be this? And so there's such a beauty there, and I think that's why it speaks to the weight when we suppress the beauty of the natural cycles of women with hormonal contraception. When we shut down those cycles, that eliminates our ability to understand our own bodies, and then it also denies men of the opportunity to love and uphold our dignity in a specific way as well. And so when we're walking around disconnected from our own bodies, that certainly impacts our relationships as well. And that's, we could probably write a whole list of effects of that, but divorce rates and struggles in marriages, just when there's that disconnect between husband and wife. It's when it comes to fertility, that has radiating impacts.
So what would you say, or like, from your mission of your business, what is the one thing, or you could list a couple, that you really want women to understand, and men as well?
Well, I probably have touched on this already, but I want women to understand that all women should know that you can flourish in the body that God has given you, that your body is good, and that you're called to integrate the fullness of who you are in body, mind, and soul. And so, starting with understanding our physical bodies allows us to tap into the deeper spiritual realities of who we are as women. And so I just want every woman I could shout from the rooftops that you are good, your body is good, and you can live in harmony with a body that God has given you. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, that's easier said than done, because, I have extremely painful periods, I think there's something going on, or I've been told I need to take hormonal contraception, I would say advocate for yourself, that if there's something that is, really a block to your well-being on a monthly basis, or a block to how you see who you are, how you see your woman, and how you see your body, that God desires our wholeness. He desires for our flourishing, and so it is possible to come into this and to view the sacredness of your womanhood.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if I can just share, I think I would sum that up. There's a beautiful quote by the philosopher Alice von Hildebrand that I'd love to share. She says, "The union of body and soul is in some way particularly close in a woman's body. She is incarnated in her body in a special way. A contemplation of the female body can yield rich insights into the mission of women." So it's through that contemplation of the beauty of our body that we discover the mission that God is calling us to. Thus, it's important to honor and to know, to be equipped in education and reverence for our bodies, so that we can live our God-given missions.
Amen. And Leanne, for all those listening, I want you to encourage you to subscribe to Leanne's Substack and to receive her newsletters. They are so invaluable, like just really rich information. But you recently wrote a newsletter on stress and the impact on our
Mm.
bodies. Can you
Mm-hmm.
just share a little bit about that, and just some tips on how we can, I guess, be aware and just what we can do?
Yes. Yes. Well, I titled the newsletter, and I like to say stress is a silent hormone killer. We may not realize just how much power it has over us and our hormones, but it may be silent. I think a lot of us are walking around with hidden burdens of stress, probably more than we're giving credit to, but it really can wreak havoc on us. And so that's everything from, the stress of our day-to-day lives. Physical, it can be physical or emotional stress, but it has physiological impact. So just to dive into the science a little bit, so our main stress hormone is cortisol, which is largely produced by the adrenal glands, and there's an intricate communication system between our brain, our ovaries, and our adrenals. It's called the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And so when cortisol is elevated, cortisol, I just want to note, is a good thing. We need cortisol for our body's fight or flight response. It gives us that adrenaline to run from a bear, to respond to crisis situations. And we have these natural fluctuations of cortisol throughout the day. It should peak about 30 minutes after we wake up, gives us the energy for the day. But unfortunately, when we're living in a chronic state of stress, our natural levels of cortisol can be completely thrown off. They can be chronically elevated, which they're not meant to stay elevated. And so when those natural fluctuations throughout the day are thrown off and our cortisol is perpetually elevated, that sends negative feedback on this HPA axis, which then can lead to suppression of key sex hormones such as estrogen and progesterone. And so cortisol and progesterone are particular enemies for per se. Cortisol really inhibits the production of progesterone, and which makes sense, because if you're in a very stressed out state, our body is not going to reproduce. It's not going to allow a viable pregnancy. And progesterone is the essential hormone for implantation of the fertilized egg and then sustaining the pregnancy during that first trimester, or the sustaining through progesterone that's produced by our ovaries until the placenta takes over. And so I won't dive too much more into the science, but really it's at the physiological level. Cortisol impacts our sex hormones. So yeah, we see that these impacts, but what is driving cortisol, and why is this particularly harmful for women? Well, we need space. I know I've touched on the importance of rhythm and harmony and honoring these different seasons as women, and so we naturally, every month of our cycle, and then throughout our whole reproductive lives, we're going through these different rhythms of growing, expanding, nourishing, healing, on multiple levels, again, spiritually and physically. And so we need that space and capacity. Our body needs the space, the safety to conceive, to achieve fertility. We need that nourishment to be able to give, to grow the gift of life inside of us in our wombs. We need to be able to, we're the ones who nourish the baby upon birth through breast milk production, which again is affected by our hormones, our stress levels, and the ability to offer that to our babies. We need that extra space and safety to heal from pregnancy. And so at every stage there, we go through these ebbs and flows, and really I think our modern fast-paced culture, we run at one speed, right? We're just keep going, push through, work that job, keep working through pregnancy, bounce back, go back to work 3 months after birth, and it's kind of this culture of suppression and bouncing back, and in a world that really wants to promote women's rights and power, we need to promote our natural needs of our body, which as I've touched on, just affects the whole of our womanhood. And so I think there's a particular burden for women of the hidden cost of stress that is misaligned to those rhythms and the ebbs and flows that our body needs. And so I just invite all women, to recognize that it's okay to need space and safety and time to heal, time to nourish, to give energy to to the life that you may be growing if you're pregnant or postpartum, time to care for your fertility if you're struggling, if with cell infertility, and there may be something deeper going on. Perhaps that stress could be a driver in that. And so there are many ways in which stress impacts us, but really it comes to, am I honoring those natural abilities of my body to menstruate, gestate, lactate, the main physiological capabilities need to be cared for.
Yes. And one thing I also appreciate about the work that you do, Leanne, is you just touched on it, the different phases of a woman's life, and you even work with women who are menopausal as well. And because that's not really something that's talked about. And so can you just share a little bit about that, and then we'll begin
Yes.
to land the plane,
Yes.
as they say.
Well, as I touched on my work with college students and hearing from young women that they haven't learned about their bodies and that they don't know, were never educated. I also hear from older women as they approach those perimenopausal and menopausal years. There can be this experience of, what is going on in my body? Nobody warned me about this, and so it's really devastating to hear that for women who have gone through their reproductive years. They're now experiencing a transition in life, a transition in their body. And again, that sense of being at odds or at war with the body can take place again as the cycle begins to wane. As the reproductive years wane, we tend to see changes to the cycle. It's almost like a reverse puberty, where you might start to have these longer cycles. They eventually become anovulatory cycles and then taper off, and with that come those many symptoms of our hormone levels falling, of the estrogen and progesterone levels falling. And so, those changes are natural. Those are going to take place, and there likely are going to be some symptoms that come along with it. But I think for women, it's just particularly challenging. Even if you're facing the symptoms, it's particularly challenging if you don't know what's taking place, if there's that mental battle as well, and around the symptoms or the energy levels. And so again, I think it's just important for women to have that understanding of this is what to expect as you approach the perimenopausal and menopausal years. This is physiologically what's taking place. There are things that can be done, whether that's hormone replacement therapy or just adjustments to your nutrition, your exercise, your sleep. There are ways of embracing this season of life and trusting again that God in his natural design for us has given us this natural cessation of our fertile years. And so just like with our periods and learning to embrace that natural cycle, how can women embrace this time of life? Menopause, it's the great pause in life. It's a time that oftentimes coincides with a transition for women as kids are leaving the house, going to college. There's this shift from being able to physically bear life themselves to perhaps stepping into more of their spiritual motherhood role, into a more maternal grandparent role, perhaps. And so again, just it's not just understanding for the sake of the physical benefits, but for just understanding, how God has designed the rhythm of our womanhood, and that this is an invitation to your fruitfulness and fertility in a new way. And so, I just, with women in those later years, it's both about equipping and supporting them through those hormonal changes, but then also supporting them through those emotional and spiritual changes as well as they come into a new season of life.
Well, Leanne, I could pick your brain more all day. And so you are a wealth of knowledge, and I just admire again, your mission and your what you're doing to help women and men. So thank you so much for your time, for sharing. And if you're not already clicking on her website, please
Well,
do. And so actually, Leanne, if you just don't mind sharing, what's the best way for someone to learn more and to connect with you?
Well, as Valentina said, you can find me on my website, www.rosefem.com. But I'm also on social media under my name, Leanne Jarvis. So you can find me there, and I post little tidbits of hopefully educational and encouraging information about the woman's hormones and cycle. But I'd particularly like to highlight right now on my website, I have a free 7-day hormone reset. And, this is for all women at any stage. It's not focused on a particular protocol, but rather, as I've spoken to, just coming to live in harmony, body, mind, and soul with your hormones, resetting in a holistic way, no matter where you are at what stage of life. And so I invite you to check that out. I think that's a starting point. There's so much noise on the internet, different health protocols, but really my aim and vision is that I can equip women just with information that can change the way we live our lifestyle rather than, quick fixes. And so, the 7-day hormone reset can be found at rosefem.com. There's a contact form on the website if you'd like to get in touch to meet with me. I offer free 20-minute hormone clarity call, so just a free consult to share what's going on and how to be able to learn how I can best support you. So go to the website, follow along on Instagram, and would love to speak to any woman or couples who this conversation resonates with.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Leanne, and thank you all for listening. And I will join you at the next episode. And remember, when you say yes to God, you change the world. God bless you, and see you next time.